Projects are unique, and this applies to their risks as well. While the main risks of a construction project relate to the quality and coordination of work with the main subcontractors, the main risks of the next construction project carried out by the same supplier can relate to the motivation of the project team and interaction with the client. Thus, each project team should allocate time towards identifying risks that are specific to their individual project. In projects, there are multiple risk sources, that is, areas where risks may originate from. The following are typical examples. Often risks relate to the resources and behavior of the customer, user, or financier. Suppliers and subcontractors involved in the project may perform differently than expected. The project may be utilizing novel and challenging technology or novel and untested working practices. Communication, both within the project team and with external stakeholders, may be problematic. Risks may relate to changes in the project plan or how changes are processed in the project. Human factors often come to play as well. Some individuals do not work well together. Some project team members may be overly optimistic or lacking in competencies. 4 types of methods are often used for identifying risks. Checklists based on experiences from previous projects are utilized. Even though I argued earlier that risks identified in a project cannot be directly copied from a project to the next, information about previous project risks can, however, be very valuable for detecting some, but likely not all, of the risks of the current project. When using risk checklists, it's important to consider how the current project is similar and how it differs from those earlier projects during which the checklist tool was made. The higher the similarity, the more likely that the checklist is a valuable tool. In case the current project is very different, it may be worthwhile to consider if the checklist should be used at all or whether risk identification should start from a clean slate. Creative ideation or so-called brainstorming sessions are valuable for identifying risks that are less obvious for the project team. The idea here is to leverage the complementary knowledge, experiences, and viewpoints of all individuals participating to the project. Carefully planned facilitation is important to ensure that powerful individuals will not dominate the session and block out risks that would be raised by others. Modeling, describing, and visualization techniques are used to classify multiple risks and identify potential connections between them. For example, the project team may create visual representations of the operating environment of the project, picturing different stakeholders and relationships between them. After this, they focus on highlighting areas in the environment that may pose risks. A further often used technique is the risk matrix, where columns and rows are purposefully pre-filled to ensure a wide coverage of discussion and to facilitate identification of relationships between risks. In this example, the individuals working on the matrix need to consider both the locus and impact of each individual risk, as well as provide a brief verbal description of each risk. Finally, research, analysis, and studies are frequently used to cover risk areas that require several work weeks or even months to fully understand. For example, the environmental impacts of large infrastructure projects need to be carefully studied prior to their commissioning. Quite often, these kinds of studies are outsourced to specialized consultancies. The use of these 4 methods is not standardized, and in practice, they often overlap considerably. For example, group working sessions can be used for both brainstorming as well as filling in systematic templates such as the risk matrix. The main point is that to identify risks as thoroughly as possible, multiple methods should be used, and a wide participation of key individuals involved in the project should be encouraged. To facilitate the next phase, that is the evaluation of risks, it is important that all risks that are identified are also clearly described using complete sentences. For example, customer risk can mean many different things, but the risk described, the customer may not respond to our change request in time, causing schedule delays, is much more specific and tangible.